You know his words will get you farther than the film will ever go. Give him a moment of your time, he'll tell you what's wrong with the show. He knows what's good, what's bad, what's really bad. His face is just a sign. Say hello to Confused Matthew.
If you remember from my Pirates of the Caribbean At World's End review, I had said that the second film, Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest, was a film that just barely escaped a Confused Matthew review. Well, if you are a fan of The Departed, you might be able to sleep a little bit better knowing that this is a film that just barely got one. It's not that this movie isn't bad, and stupid, and retarded, and obnoxious. It is all of those things. But to be perfectly honest, most of the problems I have with this movie are just personal problems that get on my nerves. Such as the characters. Those annoying, stock, cardboard cutout characters. And of course, the dialogue. That stupid, dumb, asinine, non sequitur dialogue. All of these things culminate into a movie that I don't like, but if it had just been that, I could have just written this off as a movie that I didn't like and never really thought about again. What pushed this movie over the edge into Confused Matthew territory is that after a while, this film just stops making any and all sense with itself. You'll see what I mean later on, but for now, this is mostly just going to be me complaining about the things that irritate me, so just try and bear with me as we go along. Trust me, it will all make sense in the end. That is, it will make sense about how it doesn't make sense in the... Let's just get to the review. So the beginning setup has an Irish mobster, Frank Costello, taking an underprivileged boy under his wing. We then jump ahead a little to see this boy grown and now becoming an officer of the police force. In fact, he is welcomed into the Special Investigations Unit, which focuses on organized crime, which means that our mob boss now has a mole in the very department that may be a threat to him. So while this is going on, Leonardo DiCaprio's character, Billy, is also trying to get a foothold into the Special Investigations Unit.
So, do you know what we do here? My section?
Sir, yes, sir, I have an idea.
Whoa. Let's say you have no idea and leave it at that, okay? No idea. Zip. None. If you had an idea about what we do, we would not be good at what we do, would we? We would be cunts. Are you calling us cunts?
What? What? I'm scanning my Confused Matthew library of all the films that I've reviewed so far, and the films that I'm going to review. No, it's true. It's really true. I have never heard such a non sequitur, out of the blue, stupid thing come out of any character's mouth in my life. Oh no, you have no idea what we do. Moron! If he didn't know what you guys do, he wouldn't be trying to get the fucking job! Idiot! Dumb shit! Yeah, I know, this was supposed to show how abrasive this character is, but this scene, and all of this character's scenes following this scene, do something far worse than that. It reveals so obviously what this character is supposed to be that we can't take him seriously because we can already tell what the writers are manufacturing him to be. He's so fucking obvious right off the fucking bat that anyone watching could write his dialogue from now on. Watch, I'll show you. Just pick some random situation, like a guy waiting for a bus. Now come up with some dialogue that a person who was waiting for the bus might say. But whatever he says, don't make this character listen to him. Just make him say anything contrary to the other character's lines and throw in a few swear words. Excuse me, sir, do you know when the number 5 is supposed to arrive? Of course I don't. I don't know when the number 5 is supposed to arrive. If I did, that means I take public transportation all the time. I'm only here because my Miata broke down, you pig fucker. Are you saying I'm a dick anus? See? Now you're writing an award-winning screenplay too. Basically, the guy just names off a laundry list of all of the horrible things Billy's family has done in the past for like an hour and a half of screen time and questions his lineage.
I got a question. How fucked up are you?
Oh, and I have a follow-up question that's just as pertinent. Fuck your mother in the goat mouth, dick bastard.
So tell me, what's a lace-curtain motherfucker like you doing in the Stadies?
Families are always rising or falling in America, am I right?
Who said that?
Hawthorne.
What's the matter, smartass? You don't know any fucking Shakespeare?
Well, maybe Shakespeare didn't write anything relevant to this conversation. What the hell are you talking about? You can't write! So after all of this bullshit is over with, this guy comes finally to this one solid conclusion.
I know what you are, okay? I know what you are and I know what you're not. I'm the best friend you have on the face of this earth, and I'm gonna help you understand something, you punk. You're no fucking cop.
He's right. We deal in deception here. What we do not deal with is self-deception. 5 years from now, you could be anything else in the world, but you will not be a Massachusetts state trooper.
Literally, their next scene.
There's money behind this operation. You won't be paid as a regular cop, but there's a bonus involved. Tax-free. We can't conceal that you were a trainee. You'll be convicted of a crime. We're thinking a guilty plea to assault and battery would make sense.
Given your nature?
You'll do enough jail time to convince anyone this is no setup. You'll be on probation, see a court-ordered shrink, the whole 9 yards.
You want to serve the Commonwealth, this is your chance. We need you, pal. You've already pretended to be a Costigan from South Boston.
Every weekend, Sergeant.
Perfect.
Do it again.
So, 1 second, his family is all goat fuckers and he's no cop. Then, in the next second, he's the man for the job and they need him. Okay, well, you suck at writing screenplays, so anyway. And some may try to argue that all the bullshit was just them trying to break him down, but no, they weren't breaking him down. He just sat there as baffled by all of this as I was. So they go along with the plan, and Billy is put in jail for a bit on a phony assault charge. When he gets out, he visits his cousin, and soon after, the two of them go to a bar in order to engage in a bit of criminal activity.
Cranberry juice.
It's a natural diuretic. My girlfriend drinks it when she's got her period. What, do you get your period?
Okay, so here's another create-your-own bullshit screenplay strategy that this film utilizes. Just make everyone in the film say stupid things and overreact like retards. Are you on your period? I mean, I'm not from Boston, and I've never been to Boston, but has anyone that has ever heard some random person at a bar say something so retarded completely out of the blue?
You don't fucking hit him. You understand?
Yeah, excellent. Fine. Fine.
I fucking know you. I know your family. You make one more drug deal with that idiot fucking cop magnet of a cousin of yours, and I'll forget your grandmother was so nice to me. I'll cut your fucking nuts off. You understand that?
Yeah, I do.
What are you drinking?
A cranberry juice.
What is it, your period?
Oh, what a knee slapper. I tell you, I didn't see that coming 100 million miles away. Fuck you. So then we cut back to the police station where the officers are being briefed, including the mobster's mole. Now, we're done with all this stupid dialogue now, right? I mean, I will grant you that I swear very casually in my everyday life, and I don't have a problem with foul language in films if it's used to suit some end. But the dialogue in this film just sounds like it was written by a 12-year-old boy who just discovered swear words and thought it would be funny to use cunt and fuck in every other line. The angry video game nerd doesn't swear this much, and even when he does, it's way more clever, entertaining, and purposeful than in this stupid-ass screenplay. But it has to be letting up eventually, right?
Without asking for too many details, do you have anyone in with Costello presently?
Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe fuck yourself. My theory on feds is they're like mushrooms. Feed them shit and keep them in the dark. Unfortunately, this shithole has more fucking leaks than the Iraqi Navy.
Fuck yourself.
I'm tired from fucking your wife.
How's your mother?
Good, she's tired from fucking my father.
Go fuck your mother. No, I can't fuck my mother because I'm too busy fucking yours. Well, I would fuck your mother, but your mother fucks goats. Well, at least my mother only fucks goats. Your mother is a goat fucker. See? I can write dialogue that bad. Where's my movie deal? Thank you all for indulging my own personal annoyances in part 1. It was a bit of a slog, I know, but it was necessary in order to get to the heart of what I find to be truly problematic about this movie. Of course, I could have just made this into a mini-view and only talked about that part, but that would be passing up a chance to complain, and I haven't done a straight-up Confused Matthew review for a while. Plus, I've had a bad couple of weeks. Leave me alone. I pay the bills around here, I can complain about the personally irritating things in The Departed all I want. In truth, from this point on, the bad dialogue is toned down a bit, and an actual story starts to form. Billy eventually infiltrates the syndicate after some harsh interrogations as to whether or not he is in fact a cop, which means that we now have a rather interesting situation on our hands. A mole who works for the police department infiltrating the mob, and a mole who works for the mob infiltrating the police department. The interesting thing about this is that as this film goes on, these two characters have the opposite reactions that you would expect from either of them. For example, Damon's character is the mobster, but when he's not out gathering information for murderers, he's trying to have a stable relationship. His girlfriend eventually moves in with him, and the two interact just as any couple would. As if this place is his own private getaway from the horrible things he's done. A place to forget about all the horror and just try to have a happy, normal life. Now, by contrast, DiCaprio's character is completely losing it. He describes to his shrink how he finds himself losing grip on all things normal, the things that he has been forced to witness while he's undercover, and the constant threat of exposure and death have sent him completely over the edge. He even gets hooked on Oxycontin, which is something that I unfortunately can relate to. Now, you would expect that each of these reactions would come from the other character, that it would be the straight character trying to set up a straight life, and the crooked character having crooked reactions. But this juxtaposition reveals a deep layer of what's going on here. DiCaprio, not being a criminal, is being negatively drawn into this world, and he has to fucking deal with it. While Damon's character is already used to it, being recruited so young, but seems to be dreaming of something more. Everything that I've just described is precisely why this film just barely received a Confused Matthew review. I still don't like the movie. That's just my own personal opinion. But the elements that I am describing are, quite frankly, not so bad. Both of these moles are now working for the mob boss known as Costello, played by Jack Nicholson. Costello's character parallels a real-life mobster named Whitey Bulger, which introduces us to the one major objective problem that I have with this film. Now, I have a recommendation for all of you that isn't mandatory, but it will help reinforce the point I want to make concerning my major issue with this film. If you don't know anything about the Whitey Bulger story, pause the review and go watch a Whitey Bulger documentary. Really, anyone will do. You can find them all over YouTube. Again, it's not mandatory, but it will help you to understand my problem later on. Anyway, as our story goes on, we have one mole constantly trying to work against the other, but the two having no idea of the other's identity. They even start seeing the same girl after a while, and all the while having no idea of the other's existence. There comes a point in this film where the two are directly working against the other's plans. A deal is being made between two criminal parties, and this is supposed to be the one big operation that gets the police force their arrest. But as this deal goes down, the two moles are working against each other directly, and both characters keep the other off balance. This scene was good. It managed to convey how complicated the whole situation has become without making it overly so. In fact, if the whole movie had just been about the two moles getting in each other's way, it might not have been such a bad film. But you see, there are two problems. First, the rest of this film is going to play out just like this scene. It's the same basic scene and setup, just redressed a little bit, with the two working against each other and eventually trying to expose the other. Each scene that follows this one is so similar to this that after a while it just becomes an exhausting retread. The second problem is that after the big reveal, which just so happens to be the reveal that I have a massive problem with, things do become overcomplicated to the point that the whole screenplay just becomes a bloated mess. Fuck it, I can't wait anymore. Let's just jump to the massive problem I have. This has been a pretty non-traditional review anyway, what the hell? Problem time. No, it's not the stupid, pointless ending. We'll get to that in part 3. My problem is this. DiCaprio has been noting throughout his time undercover that they must have Costello on at least 500,000 things by now. He's watched this guy do everything from severing a hand to literally tossing coke around, and yet they can never seem to make an arrest, no matter what he does. Finally, as the plot thickens, he finds out why.
You take off an armored car at the Dedham Mall. What the fuck you do? You pay guineas in Providence?
Fucking now I do.
What the fuck you do?
What? I gotta pay Costello and wait for him to trade me to the FBI? Because that's what he does.
What the fuck did you just say about the FBI, huh?
Why do you think he never gets busted? Costello's a protected FBI informant. He'll trade you out.
Costello's giving people up to the FBI. The FBI? He is giving information to the FBI. He's a protected fucking informant.
Now, I have a rather embarrassing confession to make that you all seem to have figured out by now. I'm bad with names. Horatio Hanzo can attest to that, but it's not just with movies. I've been bad with names in my everyday life from as far back as I can remember. I once called a new coworker of mine Cindy for a week before she finally and mercifully confessed that her name was Chelsea. So I confess that when this reveal came around, I couldn't remember which character Costello was. I actually had to pause the film for a bit to look it up. But as I did my research, I remember thinking one thing. They can't possibly be talking about Jack Nicholson's character. That wouldn't make any goddamn sense. Well, they are talking about Jack Nicholson's character, and that doesn't make any goddamn sense. Here is a brief overview of how being an informant is supposed to work. Believe me, it never ends up being as simple and uncomplicated as this, but this is just how it is supposed to work. If you are a mob informant for the FBI, and you are still engaging in criminal activity while you are an informant, you have to give the FBI more than what you are getting away with. This is why when mob informants are used, they are almost always the lower level guys or underbosses, people who are below other people. There have been instances of the feds using mob bosses as informants, but those bosses were giving up members of the mob family, the entire syndicate. So you see how this works. You give them something bigger than you, and in exchange you get any number of things, leniency, immunity, sometimes even money, but the benefit must always outweigh the cost. If a crime boss informant can only give the feds a bunch of bottom-tier lackeys who are only involved in criminal activity because they employ them in the first place, the informant is worthless. I mean, how is the FBI benefiting from this arrangement? It would be like saying to someone, here's what we'll do. We'll give you $1 million if every once in a while you throw us $10. Like I said, using informants is always a shaky and complicated affair, and there have been a lot of fuck-ups, particularly with regard to use of informants in the drug rings. There have been instances where informants will basically get away with a bit more than what they're giving up, but when that happens, there is usually something really fucked up going on. Now, this brings us back to the matter of this film attempting to parallel the Whitey Bulger story, and here is the amazing thing. Bulger was an informant, and he got away with far more than he gave the feds. But there is one big difference that sets the Whitey Bulger story apart from what we see in this film. It was a lot more complicated than this. Whitey Bulger's story with regard to his relationship with the FBI was a story of infiltration and exploitation. The higher-ups in the FBI and the higher-ups in organized crime were using each other to further themselves in their respective practice at the expense of absolutely everyone else. The fact that Whitey Bulger could get away with so much while giving the FBI practically nothing was mind-boggling, but when you actually learn how this all happened, it at least makes sense. And that is my major problem with this plot thread in this film. They can't even be bothered to make this make sense. The whole FBI angle isn't even really a part of the story. It's brought up so much in passing that it just begs a ton of questions that the film can't even be bothered to answer. We know what certain people in the FBI stood to gain in keeping Whitey as an informant, and we now also know what they stood to lose, as they eventually lost a great deal. The whole thing was a huge PR disaster, and that was the least of the FBI's problems. This film doesn't even make that an issue. Costello is an informant who is somehow giving up lower-level guys in exchange for carte blanche, and that's all we know. If you are going to put something as flabbergasting as this into a screenplay, I'm sorry, but you have to explore it more than this. I mean, he's an informant for the FBI. That's a big fucking deal. The FBI is literally letting him get away with murder. How the hell did that even happen? And the sad part is that there are so many minor tweaks that could have actually fixed this. Like, just transplant the characters from being on the police force to being in the FBI. Hell, if Damon's character was Costello's mole in the FBI, that would really have paralleled the Whitey Bulger story, and it would have explained how he was getting away with all of this. To say nothing about the fact that now the police force knows that Costello is an FBI informant, and this is now an endgame scenario for them. The police force now have the best case in the world as to how this is a waste of federal money, not to mention life, as Costello is being allowed to go on killing spree after killing spree in exchange for one or two small-time guys every once in a while. Hell, they could just leak the fact that Costello is an informant and let one of his lackeys take him down. That's actually kind of what happened to Whitey Bulger in the first place and why he was forced to flee. And it also begs the question of why Costello was worried about a rat being in his organization at all, and why he even needs a mole in the police department if the police can't touch him. We've already established that the FBI will stonewall any attempts to prosecute, so what does he have to worry about? And lastly, it takes a perfectly good story of a cop being a mole in the mob and a mobster being a mole in the police department and completely convolutes it. The fact that there was a rat in both camps that just barely miss each other made for a pretty decent story. But now, everyone's a rat. You, me, this rat. This really goes to show that even with a screenwriter doing extensive case and period research, a screenplay can still be brought down if they don't do the right things with it. And that is really my one big issue with this film. It took a few details from the Whitey Bulger story and just made a big fucking mess out of it. It seems to me that what the screenwriter did here was to take bits and snippets from that real-life story and superglued them onto the screenplay without really bothering to consider how this will ever make sense without more information as to what is going on between this character and the FBI. They took elements from an amazing real-life account that actually makes sense and put them into places that don't make any sense. As I said in the opening, 90% of the problems I have with this movie are simply that. My problems. I don't like the characters, I don't care for the dialogue, but I understand that there is an audience out there that would, and that's perfectly fine. We can't all like the same things. This is one glaring detail that is really the only confused Matthew problem I have with the film, but it's such a big one that I couldn't pass up an opportunity to review it. As I've said in the past, it's only one problem, but it's a big problem. Alright, so as I said, the whole film basically plays on a loop at this point, with the two moles setting each other up and trying to knock each other down. At one point, this leads to DiCaprio forming a secret meeting with Captain Queenan, with Damon tailing him to find out who the mole is. DiCaprio almost gets made, but he manages to run away before the mobsters find no one in there but Captain Queenan. Queenan refuses to admit that he was with the mole, so for some unknown reason, they actually pick him up and throw him off the roof. Them. The lackeys who don't have carte blanche immunity. Just threw a police captain off the roof. Because apparently the screenplay needs so badly for this to happen that it just completely removed all of their self-preservation instincts. Okay, well, you suck at writing screenplays, so anyway, with the police captain out of the way, Damon tries to use this to his advantage and attempts to get them to reveal who their mole in the mob is. Things eventually get a little heated between he and the stereotype there, until eventually the stereotype is told to take a leave of absence. But he opts to turn in his papers rather than, eventually come back to work. Finally, Damon uncovers the fact that Costello is an FBI informant, and that about tears it for him. He completely sets him up in an ambush, and eventually confronts him on the matter.
You're an FBI informant? Are you fucking kidding me?
Grow up. Of course I talk to the FBI.
Do they know who I am?
I never gave up anybody who wasn't going down anyway.
Then what did they need you for? Damon kills Costello and takes the credit for taking him down, and finally the two moles meet. Unfortunately for Damon, however, DiCaprio uncovers his secret and eventually leads him to an ambush on the roof. Here is where we have that Nobel Prize genius ending, complete with pointless deaths, lack of resolution on what little was at stake in this movie at all, and a huge "who the fuck are you again" moment. Basically, DiCaprio tries to take him in, and he called for a few supposed friends to help him with this, but one apparently doesn't trust him. Now, if scenes of violence bother you, or you haven't seen this movie and would like to be surprised by the ending, you should probably skip this altogether. But for the rest of you, here is how it all resolves.
Did you think you were the only one he had on the inside? Costello was gonna sell us to the FBI. It's you and me now, you understand? We gotta take care of each other, you understand? Yeah.
Ahem.
Sorry, Detective Hopkins, we can't let anybody know about our partnership.
That's right, we split it all, 50-50. That's right. I think we'll take 100% now.
Yeah, sorry, Gino, but in business like this, sometimes partnerships need to end.
That's right. Sometimes partnerships need to end. Well, Super Cops, looks like I'll be taking in all the money now. I'm in business alone, and that means that the only person that I can't trust is myself.
It's the exact same fucking ending. The Departed actually used, in all seriousness, an ending that South Park parodied 3 years before this movie came out. And I mean, of course South Park parodied this. It's retarded. Fuck you. It's so fucking ridiculous and cliche that I half expected Damon to go ahead and shoot himself for all that it makes any difference at this point. I mean, I don't mind the everybody dies ending when it means something and when it's not so completely convoluted that absolutely everyone shows up in the same place like they all came here in a fucking clown car just to have this fucking ending. So everybody died because who the fuck are you again had to protect Damon because Costello was going to give them to the FBI, which doesn't make any difference because Costello is dead now. Okay, well, you suck at writing screenplays, so anyway... Oh, and just to quickly get this out of the way, I understand that this movie is a remake of sorts on a movie called Internal Affairs, and they may have used this ending in that movie, and maybe that's why it was used in that one. I don't know. I didn't see that movie. But if that ending was in the original, they shouldn't have used it in this one. It's fucking stupid. Damon's character pins the rap for being the mole on who the fuck was he again, and gets a medal for it. No one's issues get resolved, none of it made any sense, and the whole thing was a big, fat waste of time. At least that's my take on it, but again, this film really just got on my nerves, to be honest. It had a few bright spots here and there were some pretty good performances all the way around, except for Marky can't act, but it was just such a bloated story for not much gain in the end. Oh, hang on, I almost forgot. There is one last thing that happens in this film.
Okay.
That was kind of my reaction to this whole fucking film. Okay.